Support for Headline Humboldt is made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Coming up next on Headline Humboldt, Congressman Jared Huffman hosted a town hall this past weekend and heard an avalanche of concern and anger from his constituents. Also, 5th District Supervisor Stephen Madrone has announced he will not seek another 4-year term. He'll join us shortly to explain his decision and look back over his time in office. Coming up now on Headline Humboldt. From the top of Humboldt Hill, this is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. Tomorrow, across the country, there will be widespread protest against the policies and perceived abuses of President Donald Trump. One will be held in Eureka at noon at the Humboldt County Courthouse. He's only been back in office for a little more than 2 months, yet the nation is reeling from the dramatic overhaul to our systems and governing philosophy, herky-jerky tariff policies, and the ongoing rejection of traditional allies and other international partnerships. We're also witnessing behavior we've never seen from American government officials, the wearing of masks by agents of law enforcement, the extrajudicial removal of legal non-citizens who dissent against Israel's war in Gaza, and a kind of gleeful and cruel celebration of those people's fate by members of Trump's cabinet. There is an exhaustingly long list of such behaviors, so many that it becomes impossible to keep them straight, let alone mount a defense against those you find most deplorable. That is the point. Many folks were asking Congressman Jared Huffman this past weekend what they should be doing in this moment to fight for democracy. He didn't have a satisfactory answer because there isn't one. But if we take a look around the world at what other people do when their countries are approaching the brink of authoritarian overreach, we see mass demonstrations, passionate resistance, and determination. Millions take to the streets and clamor for democracy, for the rule of law, and for accountability in government. Democratic Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey this week broke the record for longest Senate speech ever. He did so because he recognizes the moment we're in. Compared to the largely tepid and inconsistent response from most Democrats so far, Booker stood up and stands out. The truth is, there is no right answer on what to do in moments like these. But the last thing you'll want to remember when looking back, no matter the outcome, is having done nothing. No one is coming to rescue this country. No one has a life raft and a cup of hot chocolate waiting for when we finally get pulled from the water. This is on us. What do we do? What can we do? Any peaceful thing we want. This is a democracy, and that hasn't changed. Not yet. But will we? Will we stand up? Will we send the kind of message that'll be heard loud and clear inside the palace walls? I guess we'll have to see starting Saturday. Supervisor Steve Madrone joins us shortly to talk about the denouement of his supervisorial career. But first, the news. A move to change the College of the Redwoods mascot from Corsairs to Wolves has been delayed after the Board of Trustees decided to get more public input. According to the Times Standard, one concern was the lack of public input, while another was that the motive for the change might cause some backlash for its proximity to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The board had decided to consider the change because, historically, Corsairs were involved in the transatlantic slave trade. The replacement Wolves, meanwhile, has some cultural connection to the Wiyot tribe on whose unceded land the school now sits. According to a staff report, quote, the Corsairs mascot is being retired due to its problematic historical associations. Corsairs were involved in the African and European slave trade, and continuing to use this mascot does not align with the college's commitment to fostering a welcoming environment for all students and community members, unquote. A task force explored options and came up with 3 alternatives: the Condors, I like that, the Wolves, and the Krakens. According to the Lost Coast Outpost, again, one consideration for delaying the move was raised by college president Keith Flamer, who worried that controversy may be inevitable in the current political climate when jettisoning a mascot for its associations with the slavery may strike some as DEI-like, potentially inviting political retribution. This past Sunday, hundreds gathered inside the Adorney Center to hear Congressman Jared Huffman's update on his party's ongoing struggle against President Donald Trump. The crowd was restless and often angry, but not at Huffman for the most part. After his remarks, he received a standing ovation. From the crowd, Huffman described the situation as it stands in Washington, D.C., delineating what he believes are several areas of concern around migration, the environment, Social Security, and lack of adherence to the rule of law. Members of the crowd who were allowed to ask questions repeatedly sought his direction on how to proceed with some kind of resistance. Joking that he wasn't a therapist or a life coach, Huffman told folks to stay engaged, hit the streets when necessary, and not give up. He mentioned that, like Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, he would be visiting red states or red districts and working to spread the Democratic message. Not everyone was happy with Huffman's presentation. Several anti-Gaza war protesters were in attendance and at times shouted over Huffman as he spoke.
I would like to just sort of share with you my take on where we are. And again, I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. I don't think it's hopeless. Okay, we're going to talk about some reasons that I believe there is hope and we should have a lot of resolve and optimism as we go forward. But I'm going to be very clear about the peril of this moment. The truth is, I have never been more worried and alarmed about the direction of this country. And that is not just because my party lost the election and I'm in the minority in Congress. It is a whole set of concerns about things that really shouldn't be any part of partisan politics. And that starts with the lurch toward authoritarianism and this breakout to dictatorship as I see it with this president. I see it in the way he is flouting the law and constantly testing whether the legal system or Congress or anyone else will stop him as he pushes all of these legal boundaries. I see it in the way that Republicans in Congress, unlike anything I've ever seen before, seem to have forgotten that we are a separate and independent branch of government that the founders put right up front. Article 1 of the Constitution, the branch of government with the most power, directly representative of the people, the ultimate way to prevent the abuse of presidential power, to correct illegality and corruption. And that's why all of these incredible powers were vested in Congress, the power of the purse, to have control over how and where and why we spend money together in our national government, the power to declare war, the power over trade, the power to give advice and consent for the president's nominees to cabinet positions, the power to impeach and remove a president. I mean, clearly our founders envisioned Congress playing the biggest role in checking the abuse of power, and this Congress thinks that it works for Donald Trump. And that is a big constitutional problem. Unlike anything I think our founders could have ever imagined it. So, we see it with the way they have sort of cheered on Elon Musk and this unaccountable, off-the-books shadow government that we've created with Doge. We see it in the way with the recent partisan funding bill that passed a couple weeks ago. Instead of specifically directing the way that money is going to be spent, instead of correcting some of the what we call impoundment abuses of this administration, just allocated a whole bunch of money in lump sums, surrendering all of Congress's power, the purse authority, and the ability to direct and oversee how that all works. We see this breakout to authoritarianism in a retribution agenda that is becoming so over the top, with President Trump going after his political opponents in ways we have certainly never seen, the way he's trying to control and punish the free press, the way he is going after judges and law firms, not for anything they've done, but just because they were on the other side. The way he is exalting vigilante violence, I mean, from pardoning the January 6th insurrectionists to now talking about actually rewarding them and trying to make them into some twisted type of American hero, the way he's trying to control and rewrite history and culture, the way he's trying to govern by edict. Basically, whatever idea pops in his head, out goes an executive order, and we assume that that's now the law unless someone stops him. We've just never seen anything like this, and all of it is just straight out of the authoritarian playbook. It is the way we have seen dictators take power time and time again throughout history. So that is probably concern number one for me right now about this moment.
We'll be right back after this short break.
So many PBS programs have inspired me as a person and as a parent over the years. But I think it was the broadcast of When This You See, Remember Me by Perry Miller Adato. She's no longer with us, but it's a wonderful film about the life of Gertrude Stein. And in it, she began to use actors on stage reading first-person material. And this light bulb went off in me and said, in addition to the third-person narrator, I can have first-person voices. They don't have to be on stage. They can be off camera while we try to create a whole world of history, which I've spent the last 50 years trying to do. PBS opens up new worlds, new perspectives for all of us, today and tomorrow, with stories and performances that bring us together. We can all share in the inspiration, the wonder, and the world that PBS brings into our homes. Support your PBS station today.
Joining us now in studio is 5th District Supervisor Steve Madrone. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
So I have to say I'm going to regret you not seeing you on the board, but it's not something that's going to happen immediately. You've got some time left. When would you leave office if you decide, now that you've decided not to run?
It'll be the end of December in 2026, so
Okay.
about a year and 3 quarters.
Okay, so you've got some time to kind of orient your priorities for the last leg of your service, I'd say.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Plenty to get done.
Yeah, so why did you decide not to seek another term? I mean, a lot of people do. There's been people who've served for longer than you have.
Yeah.
What brought you up to the end point?
Well, I've been in public service for over 50 years, working for nonprofits and for government. And I feel like I've accomplished the goals I got into it for, and that was to bring balance to our community and to the 5th and to our board. But mostly because I want to spend more time with my sweetheart, my grandkids and kids.
You want to take some personal time finally.
Personal time. I got 19 grandkids, so plenty of them to hang out with.
Yeah. In your time on the board, what would you point to as some of the things that you're most proudest of having accomplished?
Well, most recently, getting Measure O passed, right? Not an easy accomplishment, and I don't put it on me, I put it on the voters.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Humboldt
But
County.
quickly, Measure O is?
Measure O is the roads measure to
Yeah.
actually start taking care of our roads with some funds for transit as well. And you know, with a really tough economy right now, cost of living way up, still highly impressive that Humboldt County voters voted for almost every school bond as well as the roads measure, which is going to give us the funding to start taking care of our roads and turn that corner.
Yeah.
So that was one of those accomplishments.
Okay, and then, I mean, you mentioned you were passionate about trails. How do you feel like that's turned out for you? Do you think there's still some work to be done there, or how do you feel about that?
Absolutely. Well, you know, my career started with the Hammond Trail up in McKinneyville back in the 80s, and that's been an incredible asset for the community. And now I sit on the Great Redwood Trail Board, and that's a trail that's going to go over 230 miles from Humboldt Bay to San Francisco Bay.
That's going to be amazing.
And bring all kinds of economic development to the communities. But we've got a lot of work to do there, especially in the Eel River Canyon, working with native tribes and being respectful of cultural and sensitive sites and other community issues all over the place. But I'm really proud of my trail work, my watershed work, and perhaps most importantly, just learning how to be able to build bridges with people and help our board work together.
Yeah. And I know it wasn't only your doing, but you were involved in it. I mean, having the Klamath Dams removed after so many years of struggle. We're in a moment now where Donald Trump has taken office and seems to be attacking a lot of the endeavors that have been in development for a lot of years. What are your thoughts on at least having accomplished the dam removal and now where it may move in the future with this administration?
Well, it is phenomenal that the dams have been removed, that it's actually done. I think a lot of people thought they'd never see that in their lifetime. And I really give a lot of credit to the tribes, both downriver, the Karuk tribe, the Yurok tribe, Hupa, but also upriver federated tribes in the Upper Klamath Basin. Also potato farmers and others who ultimately were able to work together on a lot of things. Not everybody was happy with it, but a huge accomplishment. And then Humboldt County has a contract for over 50,000 acre feet of water on the Trinity River. And that contract actually supersedes Westlands and other Central Valley water users. So we're on the verge of working with the tribes and with Bureau of Reclamation to be able to call for that water to help enhance our salmon fisheries and ultimately to provide water for agriculture in Hupa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you view as like sort of the next step watershed? If you could put the focus and attention on the next big project for Humboldt County in terms of restoration, where would you point that effort?
Well, we're lucky to live in Humboldt County for many reasons, but we have a huge amount of nonprofits and tribes working with landowners and agencies on watershed restoration almost everywhere. Pulling back the levees on Redwood Creek and working with the ranchers there that will actually reduce flooding for them while also enhancing salmon habitat in the lower Redwood Creek area. But also the Mad River, or what is called Bottawat River by the Wiyot people, its original name. There's a lot of projects there, and for me, being a county supervisor, I always look to where we have roads that intersect with salmon habitat and where we can accomplish both things, fix the road and repair salmon habitat. And now that we have Measure O, we've got money to be able to put in as a matching cost and then leverage money from the state and federal government. This sales tax that Measure O represents, the state and the feds can't touch it. This is a local tax. It stays here.
Yeah.
And we can leverage that 5 to 1, 10 to 1, and get a lot of really great projects going all over the county.
Yeah, it's interesting too because that was such a long-standing problem, the funding for roads.
Huge.
That now that there is an ongoing sense of or source of funding, that's a huge victory for the county. I mean,
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. But we're not going to solve our entire budget problem that way. We definitely have improved the ability for our Public Works Roads Department to start doing some great things with our roads over the coming years. It won't happen all tomorrow, but over time we'll be able to do that. But we're not going to be able to sales tax our way out of our budget situation. And I would say that I think a big reason for why our revenues are down is because everybody started shopping online, to be honest about it, right? And so we're giving these billionaires all our money. We don't have the local jobs. We don't get the sales tax for that. So when people complain about the billionaires being in charge and we don't have money for services, it's not complicated. And it takes a little more time and a little more effort. It might seem more expensive to shop local, but it's not, because then we create those local jobs and we have the tax revenues to actually help us in our community.
Yeah, our whole society is oriented to empowering those billionaires.
It really is.
And then we're shocked when they end up in the White House.
Yeah, hello. So we got to wake up.
Yeah, it's sort of an unfortunate turn of events.
Yeah.
One of the things that's happened quite a bit under your tenure was, the development of the county's cannabis rules and regulations. That's kind of been a back and forth. How do you feel about where we are now in terms of the county's rules and then also the state of the cannabis economy?
Yeah, well, the biggest issue with the cannabis economy is the fact that it's still not federally legal. And so you can't write off your expenses like every other business can.
Yeah.
It's the only agricultural crop that you charge for the crop itself, not for the sale of it or anything else, but you charge for it with a canopy tax. And the market, of course, crashed, because of a lot of things going on statewide and nationally. So we've given cannabis farmers a lot of relief on pulling back on Measure S or the canopy tax, the local tax.
Yeah.
And we're working on more, but if we can have federal legalization, then suddenly the markets expand dramatically. You could write off your expenses, and if we can get to direct sales where the farmers could actually go to a farmer's market and sell their product directly to the consumer, that will make a lot of difference for cannabis.
I mean, imagining a Humboldt County weed farmers market would be an event, I think.
It would be an event,
And I think that would be...
we sell wine at farmers market.
Exactly right. And
Why
I
not
think
cannabis?
and take out the middleman and all the, other stuff.
There's a lot of problems in that whole middleman business.
Yeah, that's where all the
People aren't even getting paid. They get their product picked up and then never get paid, and all kinds of issues,
Yeah. So now you mentioned the budget. I mean, one of the things that's been going on is obviously Trump is in office and he's made a lot of changes, is threatening even more, especially toward communities that are sanctuary communities, and Humboldt County is a sanctuary county. Have you guys seen any impacts from that? Are you worried about it? And how can you prepare, if at all?
Yeah, well, there has been a lot of fear and a lot of concerns about how that might work. Do we have a bullseye on us being a sanctuary county and things like that? But we had a really great meeting with our community and with the sheriff and the DA talking about how they do not intend to provide any direct cooperation per se with ICE. They have to do whatever it takes to follow the laws.
Sure.
But they're not going to be going about their business trying to report people and come into schools or hospitals or things like that. So, we're trying to deal with that in that way. And while we may not be doing diversity, equity, and inclusion anymore, we're doing employee development. We're doing workforce development. And those always included those kinds of issues.
Yeah.
And call it what you want, but bottom line is, I think at the county, we've been doing a good job with our human resources department and staff in trying to really provide our employees, a safe place to work and respect, and we do that as a county. I mean, Humboldt's a pretty special place, as we know.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that people maybe not realize is sort of the huge role that the county plays in dispersing a lot of the federal aid that comes through. And if there are major changes made to, say, like Social Security or some of the other, Medicaid, for instance, that would put the county in the crosshairs of maybe some public wrath, because they would be the door that gets shut, even though it's beyond their control. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you prepare your workforce to deal with that kind of situation? Is there a way?
Yeah, well, you know, there's a lot of challenges right now, and they seem to be growing every day, that's
Absolutely.
for sure.
Yeah.
But as I said earlier, we control the purse strings. You know, the money comes out of our wallets, out of our pockets, and when we make wiser choices about how we spend that money, we can actually help start supporting our local economy, local jobs in a much better way. We're going to have to just work through it and deal with it. And frankly, next June with the primary is a chance for everybody to get out and vote and actually put people back into office that care about the rule of law and about fairness and all these other issues, because that's a chance where we could potentially regain control of the Senate and the House and provide some sort of a balance like the founding folks of this country had originally imagined, with a three-part balancing system between Congress, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. So getting back to that is sort of a first step. And for people to wake up and realize that these guys, these billionaires and our current president, don't really care about the common person or the middle class or any of this kind of stuff. And if that's not evident, I don't know what it's going to take for people to wake up and see that.
Yeah, and I mean, with what we've been through already, some people would have thought that'd be clear by now, but
you would think
maybe
so.
Not.
I mean, the Democratic Party has its own issues, right?
Issues,
and I think we very much, as Democrats, really failed to really tackle a lot of these issues and come forward with that. And the recent election is an example of that, you might say.
Yeah. With the year and a half that you have left, what do you think are the biggest priorities for you moving forward? Do you have anything that you're eyeing that you're like, I really want to get that done before I say goodbye?
Yeah. Well, we talked about watersheds and water supply and things like that. Distributed water storage, you know, when we look at fires like in LA, they had a lot of water, but they couldn't provide it fast enough to all the fire hydrants because they were all being sucked on, right?
Yeah.
So all of us putting in a 5,000-gallon tank where we can in our backyards with rainwater collection is distributed storage for fire, for pipes breaking. In an earthquake, the pipes are going to break, and you're not going to deliver. You can have all the water in the world, but you're not going to deliver it if the pipes are broken. So distributed water storage is a big thing I'm working on within the fire community, fire safe community. Another one is economic development in McKinleyville.
Yeah.
Many of us, you know, have always thought it's a bedroom community. It's hard for retail businesses to survive there. Some see it as kind of a chain store, USA Main Street. But luckily, thanks to a landowner there, she's always had a vision of taking her property behind the Safeway, big, you know, 20-some, 30-some acre property that will have a town center. So ever since I got into office, this was something that was supposed to happen in the community plan to develop a town center ordinance back in 2001. And once I got into office, I was able to get board support, staff support, and now we have a draft ordinance and a draft EIR that's coming out in the next month to actually get that done, to have an ordinance that will support the development of those areas with mixed use, retail on the ground floor, apartments up above, restaurants, maybe a convention center, as well as open space and wetland mitigation and trails and things like that. So a really awesome project for McKinleyville. Also, we've been making great headway through the McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee to gather data about incorporation, not to say it should or should not happen, but to gather the data so that the community can once and for all have an informed discussion about what the pros and cons are, what the finances look like, and see if they want to actually incorporate, have local control, their own city council, their own mayor, and that kind of thing. So.
And McKinleyville might ultimately take its place as the county's second largest city at times, right?
In the summertime, it is the second largest. Otherwise, it's barely the third, but it's pretty much as big as Arcata.
Yeah.
It is a city for all practical purposes. And we'll see if the citizens want to actually do that or not.
Yeah. Before the show started, we were talking about the challenge of serving on the board and what you learned. When you took office, you were known as an activist and someone who was passionate about what you believed, and I don't think you've shed that, but you've You mentioned that you've learned a little bit of maybe diplomacy in dealing with some other board members and things. Can you talk a little bit about how serving on the board changed you and helped you grow as both a person and as a public servant?
Oh, I'm happy to talk about that. You know, in life, we always want to change somebody else, right? It's like, well, if those guys would just change and do this, and we push and we push. But really, the only place we can actually ever make change is within ourselves. I've had really great mentors and teachers, including my sweetheart, my kids, and friends that have helped me learn how to, as you say, be more diplomatic and learn to respect differences in people. And I think when we do that, being different and having diverse opinions is a strength. But bottom line is, when we can do that respectfully, then we get a lot more done. Our staff are happier for it.
Yeah.
The community sees us getting things done and working together and having 5-0 votes almost all the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that when you mentioned 5-0 votes, it's like the county is made up of 5 very distinct regions that have a very different political character. I mean, you can just, Eureka versus Arcata versus Fortuna, I mean, not versus, but, you know, each of these islands is a totally different personality with a whole different political constituency. And so having consistent 5-0 votes is really a challenge. And it requires a lot of, deal making and sensitivity and those sorts of things.
And listening to each other with respect, yeah, absolutely. But we've accomplished that. I think this board deserves a lot of credit for really working through those differences and trying to find the pathway forward together. And I'm very proud of our board for that.
Yeah. One of the things that you've championed, real quick, we're running out of time, we've got a couple minutes left, but the police review, committee or whatever they want to call it, the terms have been bandied around. Where does that stand, and how do you see that moving forward coming up in the future? Yeah,
well, we formed an ad hoc committee at the board with Supervisor Arroyo and Supervisor Bushnell to work with the sheriff and our CAO, Alicia Hayes, to go back and kind of look at our options and then bring back ideas to our board. And that's going to be happening in the next month or two. I absolutely support a citizen oversight committee.
Yeah, you've been public about that.
I have, and I frankly believe it's actually a way to increase the trust and increase our, the quality of our operations. The city of Eureka has one, and they do a great job with it. And whenever there's critical incidents, it's worthwhile to sit back, evaluate that incident, and ask ourselves, could we have done better? Usually that's true.
Sure.
And then what are the steps to do better when the next incident might come along?
Yeah.
And it actually, while it might cost some money for a consultant to help us do that, it saves us a vast amount of money, millions of dollars in lawsuits when we don't act appropriately or don't learn from our lessons and do better.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's not necessarily you're not admitting wrongdoing by just taking in public input. You're just saying we're open to hear from what the community has to say, and we're going to be accountable to you.
We make mistakes. All of us make mistakes, and it's okay to own that and learn from it. We're better for it. Better as a community, better as individuals, and so I think this idea of an oversight committee with citizens represents that.
Yep. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming in and for talking about your career, and maybe we'll see you again before you leave office.
Appreciate coming in, and please, folks, support KEET.
Amen. Thank you for that. That's it for this week. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next week. Stay tuned. Stay informed.